A stranger in the rain. Last week, I was driving home from Utah at about 3 in the morning. I live in Colorado, but I'm a musician, so I gotta go where the work takes me. I was coming through the LA Sal Mountains when it started to rain. I slowed my pace when things got really bad. I didn't want to risk nodding off. That's when I caught movement in my headlights. About 20 yards up the road, just before a turn, I saw a woman in a long gray coat with a collar. It was easily a good 20 miles from even the nearest gas station. There was no way this person could have ever been out there for any reason, other than something was wrong. I decided it would be a bad thing just to leave her out, so I approached her. I rolled down the passenger side window to offer her a ride. She only looked at me before turning to the road ahead of us. She extended her arm and pointed down the road without saying a word. My eyes followed in the direction she was pointing, and half expected to see a wreck or an abandoned car, something that could explain. But when I looked back to ask her what she was pointing at, she was gone. I stepped out of my car and called out to her, hoping to hear a stranger call back, but there was no response. I got back into my car and started down the road. After about another mile, I spotted another figure in the road. It was hard to make out, but when I got closer, my heart skipped a beat. It was the same woman as before. I decelerated and rolled down my window again. Before I spoke, she raised her arm again to point in the same direction. Then she vanished. I wasn't sure what was going on, but I wanted to get as far away from whatever was happening. Another couple of miles later, I saw her again. I didn't stop this time. I floored it. She wasn't even acknowledging me anymore. She was just pointing at the road ahead of me. The way ahead started to clear out, and it seemed like I was almost clear of the mountains when I saw another figure in the road. Only, this one was different. She was wearing a blue coat. She was waving at me as I approached, so I slowed down and lowered the passenger side window. This new stranger thanked me for stopping before explaining that her mother was having some kind of stroke or a heart attack, and she asked me to call 911. I could see her car pulled off the road, so I pulled over and made the call. After having a conversation with the operator, I got out of my car and approached the woman in the blue jacket who was leaning into her passenger side door. She turned as she heard me approaching, and I felt my heart leap into my throat. There, in the passenger seat, sat the woman in the long gray coat I had seen no less than 3 times previously that night. It took me a moment before I could speak. I explained that the EMTs would be there in about 30 minutes, and that I was happy to wait with her if she needed me to. The woman in the blue jacket thanked me before returning to her attention to her mother. I stood there in the rain until the ambulance arrived. Experience at the office. This is not a very exciting ghost story, but I wanted to share the only instance of paranormal weirdness that's ever happened to me. I work in New York City in the financial district, more specifically, the former residence of Thomas Jefferson. It's a big office building now that houses many city departments and businesses. Last Halloween was a typical workday for me. Since I work in IT, I rarely get the chance to leave my desk because the phone never stops ringing. This day was particularly taxing, so I took a later lunch than usual. The routine is pretty simple. Go out, have a cigarette, grab food, and run back and eat it at the desk. As I go out to smoke, I notice that the lobby is emptier than usual. Pretty normal, since I'm getting lunch at 3 p.m. I walk outside, fumble around my pockets for cigarettes and a lighter when I realize I don't have my wallet. Great. Gotta go back up to get it. I find a bench, light up, and have my smoke. The sky gets dark, and I'm noticing there's not a lot of people outside. The wind picks up, and it looks like it's gonna start raining. I finish up, walk back inside. As I start walking towards the elevator area, I see a guy walking into an elevator. He looked like a typical office worker. He seemed to be in his 50s. White shirt, brown khaki pants, no tie. The general look of a man who gave up on his dreams for a stable income. You know, the usual. I do what every New Yorker does when someone is taking an elevator ride up. Yo, hold that elevator! The guy looked right at me and kept walking. I ran to the elevator lobby just as the doors were closing and thrust my hand out just in time to trip the door sensor. Thankfully, I still had my hand. But as I turned to board the elevator with every intention of making this the most awkward elevator ride this guy's ever known, the elevator was empty. I poked my head out of the elevator and looked around to check the other elevators on the same side. But they were all listed to be in the lobby by the indicators near the arrow lights. I walked over to the security desk, which is in front of the elevator lobby, and I asked the guard if he saw anybody take an elevator before me. But they didn't notice anyone. I went back to the office, grabbed my wallet, and decided to go get some food anyway. On the way out, I told the receptionist what happened. Since we were arguing earlier about how I didn't believe in ghosts, she thought I was just messing with her, and we both started laughing. Then, her laughter stopped, with a heavy pause, as she pointed to the doorway of the IT room. The lights in the room were flickering in unpredictable bursts. On my return, I asked the receptionist if the room flickered while I was away. As she was saying no, the room flickered again. I was determined to find the source of the flickering. As soon as I walked into the room, the flickering stopped. Checked the server room, and there was no power issues either. I walked back to my desk, ate lunch, and thought about what really just happened. To this day, I wonder if some office guy ever died in the building and is just reliving his day-to-day routine, never to pass on because he hasn't clocked out yet. I saw a shapeshifter. I live in southwest Washington State and had rented a vacation home in Lincoln City, Oregon to accommodate me and my sister's family, who was flying in from Hawaii for the Thanksgiving holiday. We had all arrived at the rental around 3 p.m. About 7:30 p.m., my son started yelling for me. He said my 1-year-old grandson had gotten into my case with my blood pressure meds. And sure enough, one of my pills was missing. We panicked and called Poison 911. They sent an ambulance and took my grandson to a small hospital in the area. The staff there did what they could, but told us they were not equipped for the situation, and my grandson needed to be transported to Randall's Children's Hospital in Portland, Oregon. So, on Thanksgiving Eve, a pediatric ambulance was sent from Randall's to Lincoln City, about 2.5 to 3 hour drive due to the holiday traffic. It arrived around midnight to pick up my grandson. My son's wife rode in the ambulance with my grandson back to Randall's. Me and my son went back to the beach house to get diapers and clothes and started the drive to Randall's at about 12:30 a.m. So here is where we encountered something that I and my son will never forget for as long as we live. We had been on the road for about an hour. The road has 2 lanes only, and it's a long, deserted road, especially at that hour of the night. As we were driving down this road, going about 55 miles per hour, In the distance, we both saw what at first we thought was a deer running in our lane of the road, coming straight at us. But within a couple of seconds, we realized it was not a deer, but a golden-colored horse. It must have been about 250 to 300 feet away at that point. It got closer fast. Like I said, we were traveling at about 55 miles per hour. As it got about 150 feet away, it leaped upwards and morphed instantly into a giant owl right before our eyes. The wingspan stretched past our lane in the road. Me and my son estimated it to be between 12 to 15 foot wingspan. This thing was enormous. My son swerved the car to the left to avoid it, and just as he did this, the owl immediately landed about 50 feet ahead of us to our right, in the little area outside the bike path. The owl kinda tucked its head and wings into its chest as if it were scared or trying to hide. As we drove past it, I got a good look at it out of my window, and with its head and wings tucked in, it still came up to about the bottom of the window of the Subaru. It seemed a little wider than the width of a beach ball, so about 3.5 feet tall and 20 to 24 inches all the way around the body. This thing was mind-blowingly big. As soon as this happened, it was almost as if a trance came over all of us. It affected both of us in the same ways. We both did not speak a word the entire rest of the drive, at all, until we got to the hospital. The memory of the experience was crystal clear, but the curiosity and wonder did not hit us until driving back through the same area the next afternoon, after my grandson was discharged. We both agreed that this seemed to be some mythical creature or shapeshifter. I feel extremely lucky and blessed to have seen proof with my own eyes that animal spirits or shapeshifters or magical creatures do exist.